Hey y'all, my name is Kayla and welcome to my cozy chaotic corner of the internet. In today's video, we are going to be delving into the book Fable by Adrienne Young. Now, can I tell you what this book is about? No. Why? Because on my channel here, I like to sprinkle in a little series, Can You Judge a Book by its cover? And in this series, I select books based on their covers and solely their covers. I pick books that have covers that I really love. I pick books that have covers that I feel meh about. And then I also pick books that have covers where I'm all like, that's atrocious. Who approved it? Now, with all that noted, I'm not gonna tell you guys right off the rip if I like this cover or not. But if you don't know what the Fable cover looks like, something a little like this. I always like to give a little prediction about what I think this book is going to be about solely based on the cover. I will note though, I do have additional context clues in regards to the author themselves. So, Fable by Adrienne Young. To my understanding, Adrienne Young writes fantasy. It's not necessarily like high epic fantasy. It's more like fantasy set within somewhat of a realistic realm. I don't want to say like urban fantasy because that's usually more like literally you're in a city. Not to typecast this cover, but I'm thinking like either Scotland or Ireland. We're gonna be dealing with fantasy. I don't know, like this cover is giving Merida vibes. If you know, you know. I have a hunch, a speculation that this is going to be some sort of like fairy tale retelling, potentially, possibly. We'll see. I will also note I am listening to the audiobook version of this, so as I was checking out the audiobook, I may have seen that this is a young adult. So that's all I know about it. It's fantasy, it's young adult, and I think it's gonna be set in Scotland, Ireland, potential fairy tale retelling. That is what this cover is giving me. So let's delve into this book and find out. Okay, y'all, so so far this is like a nautical themed book, which I've actually never read. A nautical theme book. It's kind of giving Six of Crow vibes. I don't know, does like every young adult action fantasy adventure book all feel the same? The two I read were very similar, and this is giving that same kind of energy. So main character, her name is Fable. She had some shit go down right off the rip and now is on a ship with people who are helping her for a fee. The helmsman of the ship is the one who let her on, but the rest of the crew are not happy about this decision that he made. So when he was away, they tested her, being like, oh, you want this copper, don't you? And they threw it in the water, and she jumps in after it, and she is able to get the copper. And she gets back on the ship. Everyone's kind of surprised. They're like, oh my god, hey, how you doing? And she takes the copper, holds it out in front of the guy who threw it overboard, and she just like drops it on the ground and walks away. But my sassy, snarky ass wanted her to, I like so badly wanted for her to say, you dropped this. I would just been like, that would have been perfection, in my humble personal opinion. The ring! Something's gonna happen. She's gonna get kidnapped or something. not over yet? Oh my God. Oh, she has to get the ring. She's getting the ring. Hello. I finished Fable last night. And you would have seen the clips of me reacting to the last few chapters of Fable. When I tell you guys that the end of that book broke like my brain chemistry. Anyways, did I download a sample of Fable on my Kindle so I had something to hold? Yes. Anyways, we are gonna do what we always do in these Can You Judge a Book by Its Cover videos, and that is read the actual synopsis of the book. Because if you didn't know, one of my big things when it comes to making these videos is, first and foremost, I don't know what the book is about before reading it. I also stay away from even reading the synopsis until I'm like completely done with the book. So let's find out what Fable is supposed to be about. Welcome to a world made dangerous by the sea and by those who wish to profit from it, where a young girl must find her place and her family while trying to survive in a world built for men. As the daughter of the most powerful trader in the Narrows, the sea is the only home 17-year-old Fable has ever known. It's been 4 years since the night she watched her mother drown in an unforgiving storm. The next day, her father abandoned her on a legendary island filled with thieves and little food. To survive, she must keep to herself, learn to trust no one, and rely on the unique skills her mother taught her. The only thing that keeps her going is the goal of getting off the island, finding her father, and demanding her rightful place beside him and his crew. To do so, Fable enlists the help of a young trader named West to get her off the island and across the Narrows to her father. But her father's rivalries and the dangers of his trading enterprise have only multiplied since she last saw him, and Fable soon finds that West isn't who he seems. Together they will have to survive more than the treacherous storms that haunt the Narrows if they're going to stay alive. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about this cover. I personally love this cover. Stunning. Gorgeous. I love it. I think it is absolutely beautiful. And actually, if I had paid a little bit closer attention to the cover, I would have known that this is a nautical themed book, because you can literally see like a ship in her bright blue eye. I find this cover visually eye-catching and absolutely stunning, and I love it so much. Now let's talk about my predictions about what this book is going to be about. So I had mentioned that just based off of the name alone, I thought potentially it could be like a fairy tale retelling. No. I also said it's fantasy because Adrienne Young does write fantasy. I think this is an interesting realm of fantasy because I feel as though, at least for me, I could be wrong about others, but I feel that most people, when they hear fantasy, they think of like some complex magic system. And I think I'm starting to realize that fantasy can be far more than some complex magic system. The only like magical, fantastical thing in this book that we know of so far, again, it's a series, but in this book in particular, is that Fable is a part of a group of people who, through lineage, pass on this ability to speak to gems. So they are really good at deciphering if this is like a real emerald or if it's a fake emerald, which is such like, now that I'm trying to explain what it is, it's kind of like a weird ability, but she received that ability from her mother, who unfortunately does pass away before Fable's story in the book even starts. In my reading of this, I did make note that I felt this felt very much like Six of Crows, and I will always base all of my reference points when it comes to fantasy adventures on Six of Crows, because that is kind of like the first fantasy adventure book I have read in like current times as an adult. I definitely read fantasy adventures as a teenager child, but as an adult, Six of Crows was the first one I read. And so I feel like I'm always going to be referring back to Six of Crows. And I'm curious if it feels that way because it's an action adventure, but it's also young adult. And we're also dealing with a group of, so there's Fable, there's West, who is the helmsman of a ship. There is Willow, who is the bosun of the ship. There are 3 other characters, but I'm blanking on their names, but they're also on the ship. So we have 6 kids who are all running the ship. And how can you not make a correlation to Six of Crows? Now, I don't know which came first, the crow or the egg, right? Was it Fable that came out before Six of Crows? Did Six of Crows come out first and all these other books are drawing inspiration from it and that's what they all feel similarly to Six of Crows? I don't know. Maybe I'll do some research and throw it on the screen here. With that noted, I really liked this book. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. I oftentimes can find, and I had this feeling with Six of Crows and even Tempest of Tea, where like the pacing, there were parts where I was just like, okay, let's move on to the next one. Fable had phenomenal pacing. Like sometimes I wish we delved more into certain situations and certain like backstories that kind of explained who characters were, but also I appreciated the quick pacing. I appreciated that we're never really in one place for too long and we were able to like move the storyline along. It didn't feel too fast, but it also never felt like it was dragging, which I personally really appreciated. I will say for this being a YA, while it definitely has that young adult vibe of writing to it, a little bit more simplistic, it didn't feel to the point of like, I feel like sometimes when it comes to young adult, it can be almost too childish, like it's trying to dumb it down too much, where this got into beautiful sequences and descriptions, and I felt like the writing was absolutely stunning. And I know Adrienne Young as an author has written a wide array of young adult and adult books, so I think they are very much well known for their not like lyrical writing, but very, I would just say beautiful writing. Sometimes when you hear lyrical, you think of like almost overly too poetic and like too obtuse and like going over your head. But I felt like this was just beautiful. It was just a beautiful sequence of events that strung together a beautiful story. My one and only complaint about Fable, our main character, Fable, she was in a shipwreck with her mother and her father. And we don't know for sure actually what happened to the mother. Like everyone says she's dead, but no one can confirm nor deny that she is in fact actually dead. So I'm curious if we're gonna see her pop up in the later on in the series, but she's gone. And as soon as the shipwreck happens, for some reason, Fable's father, Saint, he decides to take Fable to this random island and just like plop her on the island and is like, you weren't made for this world, and just leaves her there. He pretty much tells her, it's like, I will give you what you want if you can find your way back to me. And he just leaves her there. And I think at the time she was there for 4 years. And she's 17 now, so she was like, what, 13 years old when he just dropped her off at this random island. And she becomes what is called a dredger, and dredgers are pretty much, from my understanding, just people who can dive into the waters and find treasures. And that is also another fantastical element to this book that no one ever really talks about, is just kind of accepted, is that they have insane lung capacity because they're just like chilling underwater. There do become points where it's like, oh crap, I should probably surface, but it's for far longer than any actual human can actually be underwater. When we are first with Fable and she's like going on her first expedition down, it literally explains like the breathing process and the, I was about to say atmospheric change, but the pressure, the air pressure, the water pressure, talks about the pressure change as she gets deeper into the water. So it is acknowledging like the process of actual scuba diving, except she's doing it with like 0 gear. So she's on this island, which is full of a bunch of dredgers. I think it's called Gibraltar. I can't remember. But they're on this island full of a bunch of dredgers. Most dredgers are men. She's apparently, you know, hung on tooth and nail to survive these 4 years, right? To be able to build up enough of an income of coppers to be able to buy passage onto a boat. So you think if this person was able to live these 4 years of life, that they would be a little more hardened, a little bit more, not necessarily aggressive, but like knowing what they want and what they need in their world. That's not Fable. Like, Fable thinks a big game, because we're in the perspective of Fable the whole time. She thinks a big game, but she never acts on a big game. Like, there were so many times where she was talking to the crew on the Marigold, which is Wes's ship, and she'd be very timid, just keep to herself, which I guess is also like a good survival tactic, especially when you're dealing with just a bunch of shady characters. But yeah, I don't know, I felt like there was just some grit that was missing to Fable. And I'm curious if we're gonna see that grit come out more, because we started to see it come out towards the end of the book. I was just surprised to see it wasn't really there at all in the beginning of the book, even though it's like, how did you survive these 4 years without any sort of like texture to you? You know, there's no sandpaper. Her sandpaper quality is like super minimal. That's like the one thing I didn't like about it. Other than that, oh my god, y'all, the last 3 chapters, literally the book could have ended at the 3rd to the last chapter. It could have ended at the 2nd to last chapter. Obviously it ended on the last chapter, but like each of those chapters ended in a way where you're like, this easily, like, you could end right here. It would be the perfect ending to this book. You could end right here. Actually, I wish the 3rd to last chapter, spoiler alert, just spoiler alert for this entire little section right here. 3rd to last chapter is when Wes and Fable finally acknowledge their feelings towards each other. And it kind of ends with them being happily intertwined. No like real spice, at like 0 spice. It literally fade to black situation going on here. But it ends with that. And I was like, that could have been actually like a really sweet, nice ending to this book. And then we could have like picked up with a crazy adventure at the beginning of the 2nd book. 2nd to last chapter, honestly, where I feel like it should have ended. So Fable eventually does find her father. Her father kind of just writes her off. And we get kind of like this beautiful acknowledgement between the two of them in the 2nd to last chapter. And the 2nd to last chapter actually ends with like Fable leaving this tea house where she had ran into her father again, and it acknowledges that she will never see him again. Even if she does like physically see him again, like that's not her father anymore. Which was kind of like, it was such a beautiful chapter and like closing of that relationship that I just loved and appreciated so much with everything else that happened like prior to it. And I almost wish it had ended there. But the last chapter, I was kind of annoyed with actually the last chapter, but the way the book itself actually ended, it's just like, what? Oh my god. I kind of wish I had recorded my reaction to that, because I was crying, I was yelling, I literally like finished the audiobook and I was like, he did what? They did what? He did. I was like going on such a rant about how that book ended. So yeah, needless to say, I will be reading The Namesake, which is the 2nd book in the series, very, very soon, because oh my god, I love this book so much. Does the book match the cover? I would say yeah, it does. Beautiful book, beautiful cover, and I'm excited for the next one. If you guys have read Fable, please let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I will see you next time. Good night.